Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. So for this video, now that I'm back from the Arnold, I wanted to make a video going through the scorecard, talking about all the placings, and spend a little bit more time looking at some of the individual pictures of some of the individual competitors in Men's Open that we didn't really get to talk about as much or as in depth on the live stream commentary. So we're going to go through the scorecards, and as we go through them, we're going to look at some of the pictures from NPC News Online, kind of talk about all the placings here, how each guy looked, because I didn't get a chance while we were doing the commentary to see any pictures, and we were watching the live stream like you guys were watching. So we were backstage. You're not actually watching. I actually have a picture here I can show you of what it looked like. So we were watching it on a TV kind of across the room on the other side of the set, just the live stream feed. So we didn't actually get to see the stage live because we were backstage. So we were watching the same screen that you guys were watching. So I finally got a chance to rewatch that. I got to look at some pictures, and I got to see a little bit more from some of the individual competitors that went by a little bit quicker during the stream. So I wanted to kind of break that down in this video, how some of the guys looked that we didn't really get as much time to talk about, because again, each guy had like a minute and a half routine, and we had 4 people trying to talk. So it wasn't really, sit there and just give a monologue of what you think. It was kind of give a couple seconds, opinion, then throw it to the other commentators. And then also give time for people to hear their music, let their music play during their routines, etc. So I wanted to kind of go a little bit more in depth on my channel and my video. So let's start out with the scorecards here. And this is pretty reflective of what we saw happen on Friday and Saturday night. So if you look at first and second place, I'm sure a lot of people want to hear about that first, so we'll start with that. Derek Lunsford at prejudging had a score of 6 and a finals score of 7. Samson Dauda at prejudging had a score of 9 and at finals had a score of 8. So what that tells you is exactly what we saw happen. Samson came in tighter for the finals. He looked better during the finals and didn't fade as bad during the finals as he did at the prejudging. So his score improved. And again, if you don't know how bodybuilding scoring works, the lower score is the better score. The lower the number, the better you're placing. So Samson did improve, and that is reflected on the scorecard, going from 9 to 8, and then Derek going from 6 to 7. So Derek at prejudging actually had a pretty commanding lead of 3 points over Samson. So that at prejudging was actually a pretty decisive victory. And then actually Samson trying to close that gap a little bit. He did look a lot better at finals. He looked tighter. He looked like he was holding his condition a little bit better. And he looked a little bit more confident at the finals. So as we look at some of the pictures of Derek and Samson here, and this is going to include Andrew Jack, because I didn't see any pictures of just the 2-man call-out of Derek and Samson. And Andrew, by the way, unanimously in third. His score did not change from prejudging to finals, so it was kind of the same story for him at both, so we can include him in this call-out anyway. But I don't think we can say enough positive things about how Derek looked here. I think he looked much better than he looked at the Olympia. He was on for both nights. He lost nothing between Friday and Saturday. Condition, fullness, hardness, and even as he posed, he seemed to get better. And I wanted to say, too, I thought his color, his tan, was really good here. I thought that was a really good look for him. Just overall, getting to see the result of going from, one of the greatest, if not the greatest coaches of all time, Hani Rambod, to a new coach, Chris Aceto, and putting together a package like this, it both answers the question and proves the point that in a lot of cases, if you really are just that good of a bodybuilder, it doesn't necessarily matter who your coach is, and you can have a successful result regardless. And that's what Derek proved here. Because you got to think about the fact that not only did Derek have a chip on his shoulder from losing his Olympia title and slipping to third, kind of falling out of the conversation of, it was kind of Derek and Hadi at the Olympia. Hadi was second, Derek was third. So he went into this show with that chip on his shoulder, but also he went into this show with the uncertainty of what will the result be of working with a new coach, because you got to remember that Hani got Derek really good results. I mean, the first Olympia that they did together for Open, top 2. The next Olympia, Derek wins. So there's certainly there's got to be some doubt, some uncertainty, some anxiety going into a show with a new coach after having worked with Hani for so long, and Hani was delivering such good results. And Derek also spoke about in his speech how he's had a really challenging year. He's had some things come up in his personal life, and obviously some of the things that we know about. The fact that he just had a kid, I'm sure, was a big additional stressor and maybe taking away some time, from bodybuilding and shifting that time to family. All these things kind of culminating in this show. And having the physique that he brought was very impressive. Like I said, conditioning-wise, fullness-wise, he really brought it. And I think really the cherry on top and the reason why Derek won is, well, A, he was just overall tighter than Samson, but B, he lost none of it. He maintained it the entire show. The Arnold is a 2-day show now, and Derek maintained it both nights, the entire night, every call out. This was maybe the best Derek that we've seen as an open bodybuilder. And I really do think, to re-emphasize that point of how impressive what Derek did here is, when you look at that prejudging score on that scorecard, with the margin being that good, beating Samson by 3 points at prejudging, kind of the old saying in bodybuilding is, if you want to beat a Mr. Olympia, you've really got to knock them out. You've really got to be lights out. You got to be that good. There can't be any room for doubt. And for Derek to have that kind of margin over a reigning Mr. Olympia outside of the Olympia, it is extremely impressive. And that just is proof of how good he looked at this show. Because like I've said multiple times this weekend, this is something that we don't see happen throughout the history of bodybuilding, especially recent history, very often. And a lot of times, often, especially when you're talking about modern bodybuilding in more recent years, one of the reasons for that is because a lot of times you actually just don't see a Mr. Olympia champion compete outside of the Olympia anymore. You really don't see it as often as maybe, back in the 90s or early 2000s. You saw it a little bit more back then. But a lot of times now with the modern guys, your reigning Mr. Olympia is only doing the Olympia because that's their sole focus, is defending that title. So that is one of the reasons why you don't often see a Mr. Olympia champ defeated outside of the Olympia. So I think in that regard, we got to take our hat off to Samson Dauda, because one of the things that I think the fans like so much about Samson is the fact that he does so many shows. He is a pro bodybuilder, and he treats it like that. Competing is his job, and he competes often, even as a reigning Mr. Olympia champ. So he didn't have to do this show, but he put it all on the line and did it. And it just so happened to not be the result that obviously he was hoping for, but you got to respect that about Samson. Because when we talk about the fact that this doesn't happen often, that's wise, because a lot of times the Mr. Olympia champ is not willing to put it on the line. Once they win, it's all about defending that title at the next Olympia, so you don't really see them in between. But Samson is different in that aspect because he did this show anyway, so hats off to Samson for that. And I think also a shout out to Phil Heath here. Phil Heath might be, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you will in the comments below. Phil Heath might be the last Mr. Olympia champ that I can remember that even did shows outside of the Olympia. Because if you think about, Hadi only did the Olympia. Derek only did the Olympia. I'm talking about the years that they won. Hadi only did the Olympia. Derek only did the Olympia. Big Ramy, when he was winning, you only saw him at the Olympia. Sean Roden, Brandon Curry. Those years that they won, you wouldn't see them back on stage until the next Olympia. And then, Phil, I remember, especially like in the early 2010s, there were a lot more shows right after the Olympia, and one of the ones that stands out to me is Phil doing the Shoutout Classic, which was like right after the Olympia. And you just don't really see that anymore, and that's why this seems to be such a historic moment in bodybuilding history, because it just doesn't happen. You don't see Mr. Olympia get beat before the next Olympia. But you saw the point spread here on the scorecards, but how I would have it pose for pose after you guys saw all these pictures, I would give Samson the most muscular. I'd give him the front double bicep and the front lat spread. I would give Derek both back shots, the abs and thighs, side chest, side tricep, with maybe the argument for side chest being a toss-up between Derek and Samson, but I think Derek really improved his chest in the sense that it was much more strided than we're used to seeing it. Samson has this crazy big full chest, But Derek came in such good condition, I feel like it gave him the edge on some of those poses. So I would have it 5 poses to 3 if you wanted to break it down by poses. Because Samson, just the size and the most muscular, I think I like him better in that pose than Derek. The front double bicep, I don't think Derek has the greatest bicep peaks. And I think Samson overall in that pose just looks a little bit more dominant. And the front lat spread, Derek being a shorter guy, more compact. Samson, I feel like, shows off his width and size a lot better in that pose. But that's kind of how I would have it from a pose point of view. Is I'd have 3 poses to Samson, front double, most muscular, front lat spread, and then the 2 back poses to Derek, both side poses, and then the abs and thigh. So 5 to 3, I think, is a pretty good knockout punch to beat a reigning Mr. Olympia. Now I want to talk about some of the guys that didn't do as well here next. Now that we've talked about the top 2 guys that I think a lot of people wanted to hear about, I want to start with Carlos Thomas Jr. So let me read the rest of these placings on these scorecards here, because I don't think we even talked about some of these bottom placings at all during the live stream commentary, because we didn't have the full scorecards until the very end of the stream. So Derek Lunsford in first, Samson Dauda in second, Andrew Jacked in third, Brandon Curry with a very impressive top 4 placing here. And I think the important part about that is he beat William Bonac, who just beat him at the Olympia. Akeem Williams managed to crack the top 6 here. Sean Clarita in 7th here. Let me show some pictures of Sean, actually, before we get to Carlos Thomas Jr., because we didn't really talk much about him at the live stream. Sean Clarita, I thought, looked great here. I really would have liked to see him get a better call-out at prejudging. He got a little bit of a better call-out at the finals, but I thought conditioning-wise, the fullness that he brought, he is pretty limited in stature. He's pretty limited in how big he can be. And I think that's part of the reason why he gets overshadowed the way that he does. This is open bodybuilding. There's no weight limit. This is not 212. But I thought he looked incredible here. His frame is filled out as much as it possibly can be. He brought crazy conditioning. I don't think he was off here. And he came in looking even better at the finals than he looked at the prejudging. I think it was just a matter of size. Like, these guys were so big, and everybody really brought it for the finals. Like, everybody came back better, especially the guys that were in that conversation for the top 6. Pretty much everybody looked tighter the second day. Nobody really lost anything from the first night, and Sean, no exception to that. And he did get better call-outs and better positioning in that night show on Saturday. But I would have liked to see him maybe get a first call-out, and he was one placing away from getting that at prejudging, a first call-out comparison there. But I think really it just must have came down to size with Sean Clarita, which, again, I was surprised about because of the fact that the last time he did the Open Arnold, he placed right behind Big Ramy. He placed 5th, and Big Ramy actually lost some of the judges to Sean Clarita. So despite the maybe 150-pound weight difference between the two of them, Big Ramy's size in some of the judges' eyes did not matter at that last Arnold. So I thought in a lineup like this where, yeah, there's some really big guys, Andrew Jacked, Samson Dauda, I thought maybe the size wouldn't be as big of a deal this time because you didn't really have a monster like Ramy in this lineup. And you had Nick Walker in that other Arnold Classic lineup that Clarita did. I thought he would get maybe the same placing as he did last time, maybe 5th. And you saw Akeem and Bonac place ahead of him. And I do think Bonac looked a lot better at the final. So I like to see Bonac crack that top 5. I thought that was a fair placing, but I just would have liked to see Sean get a little bit higher call-outs, especially at the prejudging. But I thought he looked great here. I really did. So James Hollingshead wound up in 8th place here. I thought that was a good placing for him. I think it was a fair placing. Some of the shots, his midsection looked pretty washed out, but really good conditioning from the back, really good conditioning in the legs. He had some really good shots here, so I think 8th in this lineup is a pretty good for him placing. Now, Carlos Thomas Jr., this is a guy that I want to talk about a little bit more because I didn't feel like I got the opportunity to talk as much about him at the live stream commentary. Carlos was one of, if not my favorite physique going into this show, because of the sheer potential that Carlos has. He's a young guy, but his physique, when you talk about genetically gifted bodybuilding talent, Carlos has more genetically gifted aspects than almost anybody in this lineup. Maybe a guy like Andrew Jacked would be the exception to that because his genetics are insane. But Carlos Thomas Jr., roundness, fullness, to have legs the size that Carlos has, quads like that, and to have a waist that small, it's just not something you see very often because a lot of guys, the heavy training that's required for legs that big, their waist ends up, getting a little bit thicker, getting a little bit wider through that style of training. But for Carlos to have the taper that he has, the waist that he has with legs like that, crazy round 3D arms, shoulders, chest. He, like I said to Phil when we were doing the commentary, he has kind of some of those same attributes that Phil had when he competed, just that 3D look that is not really necessarily something you can train for. It's something either you have or you don't. In Phil's case, they called it the gift because it was, kind of genetically gifted. And I feel like Carlos has that too. I mean, if you look at his shots, like the front double bicep, the most muscular, the abs and thighs, these are his strongest poses. And even the fact that I think his conditioning was off here, and it was, he still looks very strong in those poses. But I think where Carlos kind of dropped the ball here, and I said this, a few days before the show, we got a video update from Carlos. And we hadn't seen very many updates from Carlos the closer that we got to the show. In particular, we hadn't seen his legs from the back. We really hadn't seen him from the back much at all. And we hadn't seen really any videos of him posing until a couple days before the show. And when we finally saw that video, my impression was that he was not in shape, especially from the back. You look at the glutes, you look at the hamstrings, you look at that mid to lower back. He didn't bring up the back enough. If you look at shots like the back double bicep, you'll see that mid to lower lat area needs to be more filled out. It needs more density, like more actual size there. But conditioning wise, from the back, it just wasn't there. And I think we saw that update, or we saw that in that update that we got a few days out. You could tell for a couple days out that condition just wasn't there. And I said that in that video before the show. And I actually ran into Carlos's dad after the show, just randomly on the street in downtown Columbus. And I was talking to his dad, and he's like, I heard you was talking shit. And I was like, but did I lie, though? And he said, no, you didn't. He was off. And like I said, Carlos, and I told his dad this, that Carlos was probably my favorite physique going into this show. So it's not me hating on Carlos. I'm just saying what I saw, and he looked off in that update for sure. And then when we saw him on stage, that was kind of the result that he got. But I wanted to say that the fact that Carlos didn't place last here, because I think he was really off, is a testament to how good his physique actually is. Because Carlos still beat both Patrick Moore and Justin Rodriguez. These are guys that have been to the Arnold before, in some cases multiple times. These are guys that have had really high placings. Patrick was once a top 10 Olympian. Justin Rodriguez was once almost top 3 at the Arnold a few years back. And this is Carlos's first time at a big show like this. And he was off. And he still beat those guys. So I wanted to say to Carlos, if you're watching this, or Carlos's dad, if you're watching this, don't be too upset about this result. His physique still overall is incredible. And I think the fact that he still beat two guys that you could really consider to be veterans at this point, they've been around for, more than half a decade competing as pros and placing well at this point, that's still something to be proud of. Because I think even though that everybody agrees conditioning-wise you were pretty off, your physique was still good enough to beat two guys that are pretty seasoned pros. And I think that that is genuinely something to be proud of. So to both Carlos and his dad, which, by the way, it was a pleasure meeting you, pleasure talking to you, don't be too discouraged by this. Just go back to the drawing board, take the feedback that you got from this show, come in tighter, make the improvements to the back. You've got a shot, all the potential in the world. I said that during the commentary. He's got all the potential in the world. He's a young guy, crazy physique. He's got these genetic gifts, that 3D quality to the muscle. He's still got potential to be a really solid pro. just don't take offense to some of the feedback that you're getting after this show. If people say you were off, if people say you were not in shape, just kind of digest it. Don't view it as talking shit. Don't view it as, oh, they're just hating. Just kind of digest what you hear people saying about how Carlos looked here, because I think it's pretty constructive, most of the feedback that I've seen. I think if Carlos came in super dialed, even without massive improvements to actual, like the mass in his back, if his conditioning was just crazy dialed front and back, I think he would have been top 6 here, even without improvements to the back. And by improvements, I mean even without like actual added muscle. Because think about it, if he was shredded to the bone, I named 3 poses earlier: the most muscular, the front double bicep, and the abs and thighs. In those 3 poses, if Carlos was peeled to the bone, even without, like I said, major back improvements, he's very hard to beat in all 3 of those poses. But I want to jump back here to Andrew Jacked. I thought Andrew Jack looked good here. I know I saw comments of people saying he should have won, but I honestly think that Andrew Jacked, it's been kind of the same story over and over and over again with Andrew. In the back shots, particularly the lower body, he just doesn't bring it in the way that, everybody else in the top placings does. You don't see crazy dugout hamstrings. You don't see striated glutes. He's just a little soft from the back overall. And it's like, yeah, he's got these front shots that are insane. Abs and thighs, front lat spread. He's got these crazy shots. He's got crazy roundness and fullness like we talked about with Carlos. But we've been saying for years, the back is just not tight enough, especially the lower body. And Phil made this point during the live stream commentary. He said it's kind of do or die now. Like, Andrew has been getting this feedback ever since he's been getting these top placings, but nothing has changed in several years. So the judges are not going to reward you bringing that same package over and over and over again when that's been the feedback for years. You got to dial in those back shots. And no matter how good he looks from the front, he's not going to win a show like the Arnold when the judges have been telling him, the fan feedback has been that, and it hasn't changed. I think everybody watching this video agrees. Andrew has one of the most insane superhero-like physiques that we've ever seen. He's tall, he's massive, he's got crazy round, full muscle belly. He's got a ton of detail in these front shots where his abs are popping and the front lat spread, his chest is like all striated. He's got these crazy shots. But there's still something missing, and that is, bodybuilding is the most complete physique wins. And Andrew has some things that he needs to complete. You can't just be crazy from the front. You can't just be crazy in the upper body in some poses. It's about the most complete, most proportional physique. And Andrew hasn't fixed that everyone's been telling him to fix. And I will say, his posing routine was phenomenal. Obviously, I love Andrew Jack's physique. He's way more aesthetic than what you typically get in men's open bodybuilding. Crazy midsection, round, full, 3D, all that. Obviously, I love Andrew Jacked, but I just don't see the conversation. And I've seen the comments. People had him winning the show. I just don't see that conversation based on what we're continuing to see from Andrew when everybody's been telling him, here's what you need to fix, and he still hasn't fixed it. The fact is, Andrew is just not going to beat 2 former Mr. Olympias, Derek and Samson, at the Arnold, bringing the same package, essentially, that he brought to both Olympias that they already beat him at. It's just, I don't understand that conversation. He looked the same. Crazy physique, but I feel like the reason he's not being rewarded with these higher placings and winning these bigger shows is because he's been told what he needs to fix, and it's just kind of like the same Andrew every time. And don't get me wrong, top 3 in this lineup was a great placing. He beat Brandon Curry, who is also a former Mr. Olympia, and Sean Clarita, who's a 212 Mr. Olympia. So 3rd place is nothing to be ashamed of. I'm just saying the conversation of Andrew should have won, I don't really get that. But yeah, this video is getting a little bit long now. I wanted it to be under 20 minutes, but those are kind of some of the things that I wanted to touch on that I didn't really touch on in the live stream commentary. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What guys really stood out to you? What were your thoughts on these placings? And I wanted to give a little bit of a more detailed conversation about it because, like I said, I don't think people realize, like on Friday, we're in the commentary booth like all afternoon. Like on Friday, we had to be there at I think 3:15, and we were there till like 10:30. And on Saturday, we had a little bit more time. I mean, we had to be there at 5:15, and again, we were there till 10:30. I didn't get back to my room till 11. The hotel Wi-Fi sucks. It takes like 2 hours to upload a video. So I wasn't really able to make these longer, in-depth videos because, both days of the show, so much of my day was just in the booth. Like, we were plugged in, had the headsets on, had the mics on, and we didn't even leave to pee. Like, we were just plugged in. We had rehearsals, then we had the pre-show, and we were just plugged in the whole time, and it was kind of like we'd prefer that you just don't leave the set. So we were just kind of sitting there, like, holding it in. None of us were eating. We had some snacks on Saturday, but we were there, like, all day. And we weren't able to leave until, like, super late both nights. So I wasn't even getting back to the hotel until, like, 11 o'clock. But I kind of wanted to do a longer, like, more of a detailed video than what we were able to give on the commentary. Because, like I said, we were kind of prompted, this is how you do it. This is more of a conversation. The commentary wasn't really an invitation for any of us to give like a long monologue of what our opinion is. It was supposed to be we were directed for it to be, it's like you guys bouncing ideas off of each other. You're having a conversation, you say a quick opinion and then bounce it off to another co-host. So you would hear me say things like, instead of me saying like, I don't think this guy is in good shape from the back or whatever, I would say something like, Phil, what are you thinking about what you're seeing of this guy's lower body from the back? And I'd bounce it to Phil. The live stream commentary was very paced. Like, we had a set kind of schedule and idea of how it was supposed to be, and it wasn't really, one of you guys are just going to talk for 5 minutes. It was just kind of, bounce back and forth, quick little comments here and there. Let the people still be able to hear the music. Let the people still be able to hear, some of what's going on stage. When, David Bay is talking, when they're giving awards, when the judges are calling out poses, kind of stay quiet. When their music is playing during the individuals, keep your comments to a minimum. So we didn't really have an opportunity to go like really in depth on our commentary on the stream because it was so structured that we're trying to balance out 4 people talking, and it was kind of like just give a quick thing here and there. And I also wanted to give a quick thank you to Brian Powers. I mean, every year since Brian Powers has been running the Arnold, he's done a lot for me, and I just really appreciate everything he's done, whether it was free tickets, whether it was showing me around the expo, whether it was, just anything that Brian has done for me, including this commentary thing. I think Brian has done an amazing job with the Arnold. I mean, you see the stage, you see the lighting, you see the expo, all of that stuff comes from Brian's mind. Brian orchestrates this whole thing. Everything that you see is him organizing this all year before the Arnold, and I don't think he gets enough credit because he's new. He's only been around for like the past 4 or 5 years, but he takes care of everybody that's involved in this show. Whether it's me coming to do the commentary and he gets my hotel room and he gives me, VIP passes or whatever, give my friends some tickets to the show, like stuff like that. He takes care of everybody that's doing something for him or for the show, and I just don't think he gets enough credit. And I've been going to the Arnold for 16 years now. My first Arnold, I believe, was 2009 because it was a year that Kai won, and I've been going every year. I only missed one since then, and I'm about to be 32. I would have been 15 back then. And I can honestly say I've never had a better experience at the Arnold than since Brian took over. And I did the commentary before 8 years ago, before Brian took over, before I ever knew anybody at the Arnold. And even still, it was when Brian took over, he takes care of the people that are covering the show. He treats the media very well. He treats the influencers very well. I mean, you see, like Sam Sulik, for example, and again, this video is going a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but Sam Sulik, for example, there's a reason that Sam chose the Arnold Amateur to be his big show. It's because they've given him such a good experience the years that he's attended. You saw the pictures last year of Sam and Arnold. You saw, the photo op stuff, the stuff that they offer Sam, the booth that they gave Sam. There's a reason why some of these guys pick the Arnold as their show. And I really think that one of the big reasons that Sam wanted to do the Arnold Amateur was because of how good Brian treated him. Brian has like this one-on-one relationship with like every bodybuilder, every influencer, every supplement company owner that's going to the Arnold. He talks to them throughout the year, me included. And when we get there, we have like this amazing experience because Brian provides that for all of us. And if we bring our friends, if we bring our family, he takes care of all of them too. He wants everybody to have a good time. And I just wanted to make the end of this video kind of the Brian Powers shout out because he works very hard to make this show the success that it is. And none of the stuff that you see, whether it's me, Phil, or Sydney on the live stream, whether it's, your favorite supplement company, your favorite clothing brand, your favorite influencer, a lot of that stuff would not happen. You would not see them. You would not meet them at the expo if it wasn't Brian's idea, if Brian didn't text them and get their number and say, hey, come to the show. And a lot of people were saying the lighting is so good at the Arnold. I saw so many people say the lighting and the stage are so much better at the Arnold than the Olympia. It's because Brian reads the comments of what you guys are saying, and then he goes and executes that into setting up that stage, to setting up that lighting until you guys are happy. There's a reason you don't see smoke machines and lasers and gyrating disco ball lights. And there's a reason the lighting is so good at the expo. The lighting is so good at the prejudging and final stage, and it's consistent. Because Brian listens to the fans, he listens to photographers, he listens to videographers. What is the feedback that I can make this show better as far as the viewing experience? And he really spends a lot of time on that. So now we're over 30 minutes. I'm going too long, but I hope that if you made it to this point in the video, you can see, some of these aspects of how a show of this scale, like the Arnold is so big, it's hard to even fathom the amount of people that come to Columbus just for this event. It's massive. And the guy that is heading this show spends so much time on the details, and he's like not very public. He's kind of thankless. He doesn't get really any recognition. Everybody talks about, Schwarzenegger because it's his show. But Brian is the details behind this whole thing. So I wanted to thank Brian, and I hope you guys, if you attended the Arnold, if you enjoyed the live stream, say thanks to Brian. And one thing I will say, I never do this, but one thing I didn't get the opportunity to do, I really wanted to go. I didn't get to spend a lot of time at the expo. I went for a little bit. But if anybody has the Young LA Arnold Classic collab shirt from the expo, if you have it in an extra large, message me and I will pay you for it. I really wanted to get one of those, and I just didn't have time to go through that line. And it looks so cool. I'm like really salty that I didn't get one. So if anybody was able to get one, hit me up, email me, whatever. I will pay you to get that shirt in an XL. I love that shirt. I love that kind of collab idea. They've got the Arnold logo on there. They've got a cool design on the back with like the date and stuff. I like to get, every year that I go to the Arnold, I try to get an Arnold shirt with a year on it. And this year I didn't get one, and that's the one that I want. So if you made it to the end of this video, you're probably a real fan. Maybe you went to the expo. Maybe you got one of those shirts. Hit me up. I will pay you. I'll put what do you think's a fair bounty? Like $50? I mean, it is just a t-shirt. $50? If you have one, I'll give you $50 for it. Does that seem fair? Anyway, I'm just rambling now, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I wanted to make it longer. I wanted to make it more detailed. I wanted to make it more in-depth for you guys, so you guys had a little bit more of what my opinion was. I know the videos were short this weekend. I know the live stream commentary, like I said, it was just kind of a quick, 10-second opinion here and there. My time was just so sucked up by being in that media booth. I didn't really have time to make longer videos this weekend, so I wanted to make this one longer, give you guys some more insight as to what I thought, what went down, how the weekend went. But as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification icon if you have not already. I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. Alright guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.